Well, good morning. We have any visitors this morning? Where from? Buffalo. Is that what you said? Oh, Buffalo. Is it still snowing? Anybody else? Where? York. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, well, welcome to all of you here this morning. In the gospel today, Jesus uses the image of sheep and shepherd. And for us to understand what it is he's talking about, we have to kind of go back in history. At the time of Jesus, and actually even today, there's a group of people called Bedouins. And Bedouins are people who literally live with their flocks. There is no home to go home to. They live in tents, and they wander the arid parts of the eastern part of Palestine, taking their flocks with them from oasis to oasis. All the grazing is done on land commonly held, and literally they take their lives with them. And the reason that Jesus chose this image is because when you live that closely with your sheep, there's a different kind of bond. There's a different kind of experience because quite literally, you are dependent upon the sheep for all kinds of things. You are dependent upon them for clothing, for wool. You're dependent upon them for your income and for your food. You're dependent upon them, even in the midst of the desert, for companionship. Don't you talk to your dog? How many in here talk to their dog? Come on, fess up. How many talk to their cat? Aren't you the sweetest little, Well, when you're around any animals that intensely, you begin to attribute to them some human qualities. And you begin to talk to them. And I'm sure the Bedouin shepherds did the same thing. When you're alone, you learn that there is a sense of companionship. When your dog's not in the house, you know it, right? And you wonder whose yard he's terrorizing. Well, the same is true here, that intimacy that develops Jesus recognized as a symbol of the kind of intimacy that he wanted with us. That he wanted us to have that same sense of dependence on the shepherd that the sheep had. And he wanted to express to us that he would have that same sense of loyalty to the sheep that the shepherds have. That the shepherd is very loyal because he depends on them. And Jesus says the same thing to us, that I want you to be sheep, not because sheep are dumb, because that's not what he was talking about, but rather he wants that kind of intense relationship where there is no other distraction, where there's just you and I, or we and him, where we can be one with our shepherd. Now, Jesus says that there's a couple things that he would do. And one of those things that he did was to lay down his life. That a good shepherd would risk his life to save his sheep. That a good shepherd would risk his very existence to protect his sheep. And that's the intensity of this relationship that Jesus is talking about. And so Jesus showed us the way by literally laying his life down, by dying so that you and I could live, dying so that you and I could have our sins forgiven, dying so that we could be one again with our God. So this is a very intense relationship. And we hear this all the time. How many years have we been coming to church? And we talk, the sheep, the shepherd, the good shepherd, the sheep, the shepherd. We're missing the intensity with which Jesus spoke these words. He wants to draw us into intimacy. He wants to draw us into dependency on him. He wants to draw us in to this relationship. The shepherd cannot live without his sheep. The shepherd is totally in need of the presence of his sheep. And the sheep would scatter and wander and be killed and be unsafe if we did not have the shepherd. Now, there are many false shepherds in our life. There are people trying to lead us to pastures that we really shouldn't be going. The internet, the television, the newspaper people, some politicians, and certainly the advertising industry, trying to lead us to places that are not healthy, trying to convince us that good is bad and bad is good. Even those words have changed in our language. Have you ever noticed that? You hear kids now say, wow, is that a bad car? Which means good.